If I told you a brief rendition of my story. It is, after all, the story that has led all of us to be here. It's been quite a road. I will turn 320 this December. And there's been a lot of developments in those 320 years, almost all of them quite delightful. I was born in these woods. There were quite a few more woods when I was born in 1689. My father did not see fit to teach me to read or write. I kind of wish that he had, because then I could have written my own story and instead of letting John Murray put words into my mouth. But I suppose I could have taken it upon myself to teach myself to read and write also, but I was having too much fun making money. I ended up, despite my handicap of not being able to read or write, with a 500-acre spread, which, if I do say so myself, was fairly respectable. Obviously, this property and the 200 acres of what is now the wildlife preserve and the cemetery, and quite a bit more besides. Some of you might have come fairly well. In addition to my entrepreneurial enterprises, I have always been extremely interested in the political and especially the religious waves sweeping through our community and our country. And when I was a young man, one of the most interesting waves passing through was Universalism. And it was sort of a shapeless sense for most of the time, although in 1735 there was really well. In addition to my entrepreneurial enterprises, I have always been extremely interested in the political and especially the religious waves sweeping through our community and our country. And when I was a young man, one of the most interesting waves passing through was Universalism. And it was sort of a shapeless sense for most of the time, although in 1735 there was a mission to Waretown, New Jersey, which is really, really far away. I think it must be 3-4 miles down the road. But we all went down there, and there was a mission from the Ephrata Cloister. Some of you may have heard of them. They are, frankly, a little bit odd community of people, but in addition to their other oddities, they were Universalists, and that's primarily what they addressed. The reason that Universalism was so interesting and so applicable in my day was, of course, this was just before the Great War of Independence from Britain, and the democracy was spreading, so it fed into that extremely well. But as you may know, religiously in this country at that time, the Calvinists held a great deal of sway, and the Universalism played against that. The Calvinists believed in predestination, that only a certain number of people, by which they meant themselves, were going to heaven, and everyone else was guaranteed to make it to hell. So the Universalist message, which, when you broke it down, came to the fact that if God is good, there's no way he's going to send any of his children to hell. They're all guaranteed to make it to heaven. And that was a much more attractive prospect for most of us. And we, and especially I, embraced that and have ever since tried to live that out in the course of our lives to the best of our abilities. One of the things that I used to do is, whenever someone came through the area, and particularly the wandering ministers, I would find them and I would engage them in conversation, perhaps even a little bit too much. I came to be known as something of an odd mortal, as you probably can tell. But they enjoyed, I think to some degree at least, speaking with me. I certainly learned a great deal from them. In those days, there weren't very many buildings, never mind establishments to stay, so I would invite visitors, and particularly the ministers, to come stay at my house. It's not there anymore. It came down in 1973, but in 1750 it was one of the most wonderful, comfortable places to stay. They usually gratefully accepted my invitation, and in fact, we would have, not really having any other choice, we would very often have their services in my sitting room on Sunday morning, up to the point in about 1760 that my wife Mary got so sick and tired of having my entire community in her sitting room on a Sunday morning, caused me to go over where you can see the chapel behind me. That's not it, but that's where it was. We put it up in 1760. Neighbors offered their help. I didn't do it all myself, but I turned down their help, figuring that God had given me great success in life, and it was a good time for me to return it. So with some folks who worked for me, we put up the chapel. It didn't take very long. We put it up. I had it done specifically for the use of a Universalist minister, to spread the gospel of universal love, which is what I had dedicated my entire life to. There was a small problem. There was no Universalist minister. Never have been. There were Universalist churches not too far away, but in those days 10 miles was a long ways, and we needed one here. I allowed anyone coming through to use it, all of the various denominations. Over time, the various groups, as they got established, the Presbyterians, the Quakers, and the Baptists, got a little bit frustrated with that situation, and one